In our last episode, we stumbled upon the body of a woman named Mary Jane after purchasing and installing the Creation Club creation, the CR-74L combat rifle. On her body, we found the Commonwealth Travel Guide holotape, Mary Jane's wedding ring, and next to her corpse, we found a bloodied CR-74L combat rifle, which I covered in detail in my last episode that you can watch here. Examining the holotape, we find 4 entries. We read the entry on the CR-74L in my last episode. Now we can read the others. In the first, welcome. Hey friends, Lily the Explorer here with some instructions on how to use my handy guide to the Commonwealth. To use it, just visit any major point of interest on your map and check the tape for my advice and commentary. You can even talk to me through the message prompts. Hopefully, we'll end up best of friends. Lastly, I want to dedicate this guide to my wife, Mary Jane. For her to fulfill my dream of making this guide, it means everything to me. Thank you, and I love you always. In the next one, note to Lily. Well, Lily Bell, it took me 6 months, 4 broken bones, 1,000 scars, and 1 bad doohickey of a rifle, but I've finally done it. I made it all the way to Sanctuary. Damn, I'm no good at this stuff. Here I am crying and I haven't even said anything. But crap, here it goes. I know it was your dream to finish the guide, really finish it, and not just rely on the words of traders. Man, I wish you could be here with me right now, for more reasons than one. I'm on my way home now, but I don't know if I'll make it back to you. And after the crap I've done, who knows where my soul will end up? Maybe it'll find its way into this ring, and if some good Samaritan sees fit to bring it back to you, I'd be eternally grateful. With that, our quest log updates. We need to use the guide to trace the couple's route back home. Mary Jane died here just outside of Sanctuary, which was the last stop while creating Lily's Guide to the Commonwealth. She died to these mongrels shortly after writing this note. We now need to find the couple's home and bring Mary Jane's ring back to Lily. Next, we can finish up this holotape by reading the final entry, Guide Locations. And we see a huge, overwhelming list of places to visit in the Commonwealth. Each of these locations unlocks a new Commonwealth Travel Guide entry that we can read. There are 23 of them. I visited them all, and I will share with you the lore. We start by heading to Sanctuary. While inside Sanctuary, if we access the Commonwealth Travel Guide, we find 2 new options. The first is the Sanctuary Hills Travel Guide entry. Sanctuary Hills seems like a funny name for a place that has neither hills nor a sanctuary. I guess they'd have a tough time selling the place if they called it Predatory Plains. I mean, do you even want the word plain in your sales pitch? I think not. What do you all think? And here we find 4 options. We can say, "You're overthinking this." And she says, "I know, right? It's just the explorer in me talking. When I discover a new place, it's my responsibility to name them, so I try to pick a name that makes sense." Or we can say, "It'll be Sanctuary again someday." And she says, "I like your attitude. It's almost as if I wrote the response, ha ha ha." Well, I don't know what it was like back then, but with a little love and a whole lot of elbow grease, I reckon we can make this place as pretty as a peach. Or we can say, personally, "I like plain." And she says, "Do you? Plain can be good at times. Other times, plain can be plain old boring. But different strokes for different folks. Far be it from me to criticize a person who likes simple things. Hell, I married one." Or we can say, "They should just call it crap hole." And she says, "See, that's why neither you nor Mary Jane is ever going to be my real estate agent. You need to put that lipstick on the pig until it's the finest, prettiest little piggy that ever did walk this earth." Anyways, regardless of the name, do you think Sanctuary Hills might be a good place to settle down? I actually lived here once, we can say. And she says, "Really? It must have been a long time ago. I know there's some farms in the area, but people tend to avoid settling in old world homes. Kind of a superstitious thing, if you get what I mean. Personally, it ain't the ghosts that scare me, it's the bugs." Or we can say, "Well, it's as good a place as any." And she says, "Oh, I bet you're one of those people who can live just about anywhere. Mary Jane's like that. Just give her a roof and a bed and she's good. Me, I need a few more comforts. A pillow, some sheets, maybe a pet dog and a cold cerveza. Is that too much to ask? Or we can say, maybe for people with bad taste. And she says, well, I trust you'd know. The only thing I know about Sanctuary is from the words on a map. I asked a trader what it was like and he drew a little picture. Can't say it was a good one, but maybe it wasn't his fault if the thing he was drawing wasn't all that inspiring. Or we can say, it'd work better as a Deathclaw sanctuary. And she says, ha! I imagine a safe place for a Deathclaw is just about anywhere. Those things are at the top of the food chain. Well, it was fun chatting about Sanctuary with you. On to the next location. I showed off every dialogue choice there, but in the game, once we choose an option, we can't go back and choose another option. Accessing the entry again, and it simply says, on to the next location. Moving down to the second entry, we find Sanctuary Hills Additional Commentary. And here we find the transcript of a conversation between Lily and Mary Jane. Hello? Is this thing on? Oh look, it's transcribing what I'm saying. Huh, it really works. Dratting hell. No more long nights typing at the terminal. No more long nights trying to find a doggone terminal. So yeah, Sanctuary Hills, or as Mary Jane likes to call it, the butt end of the world. No, I just put that crap hole answer in as an option for the users. To me, Sanctuary's more like the snot in your nose. The glowing sea is the ass end. Wait, if that's the, business end, what does that make Quincy then? Don't even go there. Okay, I'll leave it alone. Still, I feel like I want to keep going, just to really see it. There's no way. Not in your condition. The traders here told us everything we need to finish the guide. We made it as far as Lexington. That's got to be good enough. Yeah, but it's been weeks since they last saw it. Sanctuary might be different now. It might even have hills. Somehow, I doubt that. So looks like the last stop they were at was Lexington. That's where we need to go to pick up the trail. If we navigate to the guide locations and scroll all the way down to Sanctuary, we see that it is visited. This is a handy way to keep track of all of the guide entries that we've already read. Moving on to Lexington, we again find 2 new entries. First, we can read the travel guide entry on Lexington. If you like to shop, Lexington's got a little bit of everything. There's a laundromat, a pharmacy, and even a supermarket. We can say, you don't shop here, you scavenge. And she says, true, but sometimes I like to have a little fun with it. I'll grab a basket and shop the aisles, maybe even head over to the counter when I'm done and ask the clerk for help. Small talk is not their strong suit, though. Or we can say, it would be good to wash my clothes. It sure would, she says. Problem is, none of the machines work. But you might find some Abraxo and a brush or two. Won't get you all the way clean, but a halfway decent job is better than none. Still, it'd help if someone was around to tell you how to get the washers working again. Or we can say, pharmacies have useful chems. And she says, fair point, but that's not the aisle I like to shop in. I'm usually on the hunt for first aid. Of course, you better be sure to read the labels. You might swallow a pill thinking it's for a headache and wake up the next morning with biceps the size of bowling balls. It'd help if there was someone to sort it all out, but I'm as much of a doctor as I am a mole rat. Or we can say, the market is a good place to start. And she says, always is. They got food, they got junk, they got pretty much everything. It's almost too much, having so many choices and such tiny arms. I wish there was a clerk around to help me carry it all out. Fact is, there ain't much service at any of these shops, just ferals. Still, it may not be like the old days, but it's still shopping. Only difference is you don't pay with caps, you pay with bullets. And the ferals? They're like the cash registers. Just put a few rounds in them and you've paid in full. I pay with my fists, we can say. And she says, you must be one brave son of a mutant to do that. I ain't got a puncher's chance boxing with one of those things. I'm scared they'll just bite my fist. Or we can say, I use another method of currency. And she says, now I'm curious. Is it a flamer? A baseball bat? Or maybe it's just plain old caps? You know, I never tried tossing caps at a feral. It works on people. Maybe it would work on them too. Or we can say, bullets pay for pretty much anything. And she says, that's a fact. Although in some cases you ain't paying so much as you're robbing. At least with ferals, they don't take caps. Although to be honest, I've never tried to pay one. Maybe I've been going about it all wrong. Or we can say, I like to save my bullets. And she says, so you're more like a shoplifter then? Granted, I suppose it ain't stealing 200 years after the fact. There's definitely a statute of limitations here. Still, you must be real light on your feet to get out of there without sounding the alarm. I so much as breathe and I get 4 ferals under my hat. Anyways, if you manage to escape the ferals, the raiders, and the occasional 40-foot mutant, Lexington's got a lot to offer. Here's hoping you experience all of it. When done with the travel guide, we can move down to read Lexington's additional commentary, and we again find a transcript. What's wrong? It's nothing. It's not nothing, or else you wouldn't be limping like my grandpa Julio. Just took a shot in the leg. Nothing a stim pack can't cure. Stop it. We're going back. We can't go back. We're almost there. Not back home, dummy. Back to Diamond City to have the doc look at it. I'll be fine. You're as stubborn as a mule, MJ, but you ain't got nothing on me. Either we head back now or... Lily! Uh-oh. Something happened to Lily in Lexington. What could it be? Well, we learned from this terminal entry that Lily wanted to take Mary Jane to a doctor in Diamond City. Perhaps that's where they went next. Arriving at Diamond City, we can first read the travel guide entry. So here we are in Diamond City, the unofficial capital of the Commonwealth, although I guess the folks in Goodneighbor would beg to differ. Anyways, you can't go to Diamond City without trying out their world-famous noodles. I can't believe Mary Jane wants a Brahmin steak for lunch. That's like running laps around a swimming pool. The whole point of being there is to take a swim. We can say, I don't trust the cooking skills of a robot. And she says, sure, he doesn't have a sense of taste or smell, and he ain't the best when it comes to customer service, but he's also programmed to do one thing, so he should be good at it. You wouldn't say a toaster can't toast bread, would you? Well, Takahashi is pretty much a noodle toaster. Or we can say, agreed, when in Rome. And she says, that's my philosophy too. Well, up to a point. I hear some people take the whole Roman thing a little too far, if you get my meaning. Is that a reference to the Legion in Fallout New Vegas? I think it is. Or we can say, you know who doesn't eat noodles? A synth. And she says, well, if they replace Mary Jane, I wish they used a more adventurous model. I love the woman, but stubborn doesn't begin to describe it. Or we can say, I can't afford the noodles. Oh, right, she says. I forgot they're marked up. 55 caps is a bit much compared to what the traders sell it for. Still, you know how restaurants work. You're paying for the atmosphere. By the way, where do you think Takahashi got his training from? How come other robots don't make noodles like him? We can say somebody reprogrammed him. Oh, that makes sense, she says. Kind of like what Mary Jane did with that Pip-Boy. I'll have to ask her about it. She's better with gadgets than I am. Or we can say, he went to culinary school, obviously. And she says, wow, is there a school for that? Wait, were you being serious? I can't tell. I mean, I typed it as a joke, but now that you're asking it, I don't know if you mean it the way I typed it. Or if there's actually a school and I just never heard of it. I'm going to be thinking about this all day. Or we can say, the other robots have real jobs. And she says, well, I'd say being a chef is a damn fine way to make a living, especially at those prices. And half the time, the other bots don't even do their job. They kind of just attack everything. Or we can say, they're clearly inferior machines. You got that right, she says. If every robot learned to cook, the world might be a better place. At the very least, it would be tastier. Ah well, it was fun chatting with you. If you don't get to try the noodles today, make sure to eat something. Can't have my favorite wastelander walking around hungry. When done, we can read the additional commentary for Diamond City. Doc, what's wrong with her? It's unfortunate, but the cancer's too widespread. I hate to say it, but she has maybe 1 or 2 months to live. That's bullcrap! Mary Jane. I'm sorry. Screw you! We're gonna find another Doc Lil. I bet there's one in Goodneighbor smarter than this moron. Crap. I don't care if we have to go halfway across the glowing sea. We're gonna find you a real doggone doctor, and he's gonna fix you. But Lily doesn't say anything. So, Lily has uncurable cancer. But did they find a cure in Goodneighbor? Heading to Goodneighbor, we again find 2 entries, starting with the travel guide. Hey, you made it to Goodneighbor. Not an easy thing to do these days. Of course, I've heard inside town might even be more dangerous. But luckily there's that really helpful guy named Finn selling insurance. Mary Jane thinks I'm an idiot for paying him, but he seemed like a trustworthy guy to me. You're definitely an idiot, we can say. Mary Jane thinks so, she says. But sometimes having peace of mind is worth a few caps. Maybe not that many caps, but I've never been good at haggling. Or we can say, buying insurance is a good idea. Ain't it? She says. I know I probably won't need it, but having it helps you relax. It's like a shot of whiskey, only more expensive. Or we can say, it's not insurance, it's extortion. And she says, well, Finn did look a little mean, but you can't trust a book by its cover. At least, that's what they say. I can't remember the last time I've even seen a book that didn't have the cover ripped to shreds. Or we can say, giving people your trust is important. And she says, yeah, if you can't trust your fellow man, who can you trust? Dogs, I guess. Besides, I'm sure all the rumors about Good Neighbor are way overblown anyway. The place hasn't been shady since before the war, back when Mary Goodneighbor was doing stripteases at the old Howard Theater. Magnolia's show was a lot tamer than that. That's too bad, we can say. And she says, oh, I'm sure you can find somewhere else to watch that sort of thing, but you'll probably need to pay a lot more than I did for insurance. Or we can say, it's still pretty erotic. And she says, you think so? Mags just seems like a mother figure to me, so I can't see her that way. I guess she's still got that charm, though. Or we can say, a ghoul burlesque show would be fun. And she says, hey, I can't say there hasn't been a time where I asked MJ to do one of them husky ghoul voices. Those are sexy. Or finally, we can say, I just like Magnolia's music. And she says, sure, the music's great. Just having anything other than what Travis plays is a nice change of pace. And that's coming from me, the girl who wears out a song faster than heels on a ferrule. Anyways, hope you enjoy Good Neighbor, and while you're in town, don't forget to take a trip down memory lane. Tell your past self I sent you. When done with the guide, we can move on down to read the additional commentary. Don't cry, MJ. It'll be all right. A month or two ain't so bad, and I've lived a long enough life for most folks. No, we're gonna find another one. There's a dock at Bunker Hill, too. It ain't no use. You know that, I know that. We could put wings on a pig, but it ain't gonna fly. But we can still finish this guide. I don't give a damn about the guide, Lily. But you do give a damn about me, and I want to finish it. So you're gonna bite your tongue and listen to what I have to say. There's no way we can make it to Sanctuary, Lil, and that's not where I want to spend our last days. I didn't say we were going to Sanctuary. I don't understand. I love you, MJ, but sometimes you can be thicker than a yaoguai. You mentioned Bunker Hill, right? Well, the caravan traders there have gone pretty much everywhere there is to go in the Commonwealth. If we ask them about Sanctuary and Concord and everywhere up north, we can probably finish the guide without ever stepping foot in any of those places. All right, but after that, we're headed back home. So Mary Jane resigned herself to the knowledge that Lily was dying of cancer, but before she died, they made their way to Bunker Hill. Arriving at Bunker Hill, we can open up the guide and start with the travel guide portion. Bunker Hill. They say a great battle took place here hundreds of years ago. Now it's more of a hub for the local caravan traders. Trash Can Carla, Doc Weathers, Cricket. All your favorite merchants in one place. Given how many people know those names, in a weird way, they're the closest thing we've got to celebrities. We can say, I should ask them for an autograph. And she says, what would you have them sign? I suppose it'd depend on the person. Maybe Cricket could sign your gun, and Lucas could sign your armor. Doc could sign a first aid kit, and Carla could sign your junk. Wait, that didn't come out right. Or we can say, they're just people like you and me. True, she says, but in every life there's the people you pass on the street and the people you see on the billboards. You can't help but look up to one. Or we can say, I'm the only celebrity here. And she says, oh, is that right? Well, in that case, I'm glad you're the one who picked up this guide. Maybe you could put in a good word for us when you rub elbows with all your rich and powerful friends. That's what rich and famous people do, right? They just get in a room and start elbowing away. Or we can say, Travis is a celebrity. Carla's a walk-in store. You're right, she says. Travis is on another level. He doesn't have to walk to your door. He's right in your living room, playing you off to sleep. Unless he plays a fast song. Then you're going to stay up for another minute until the tune ends. But yeah, even if you don't think the caravanners are famous, they're all pretty important people. Still, They wouldn't be able to do what they do if it weren't for the guards that stand with them. Because behind every good explorer, trader, or scaver peddling moonshine, there's an even better woman with an even bigger gun. Are you talking about Mary Jane, we can say? Of course, she says. Although I don't like the phrase behind every good so-and-so. Mary Jane's my better half for sure, but I would never put her behind me. We're equal partners in this thing. Well, unless the raiders are chasing us, then it makes sense for her to be there. Or we can say, the people behind me are decidedly worse. And she says, well, they say you can't choose your family, and sometimes you can't choose your friends. Out here, things just happen. Still, I wouldn't be so hard on them. They're your companions for a reason. It may not be a good one, but it's obviously reason enough. Or we can say, sometimes the person behind you was a dog. And she says, I bet they're a good dog too. The best dog. Who's a good doggy? Your dog. Tell them I said so. Or we can say, I only leave bodies behind me. That's dark, she says. Real dark. I hope the bodies you're talking about belong to the bad guys and not the good folks trying to make it out here in the Commonwealth. Because if so, I'll be fixing to change your mind about that. Of course, no matter who you got behind you, in front of you, or on either side, you got me and Mary Jane on your arm. Let's head off to the next site and see what else we can find. When done with the guide entry, we can read Bunker Hill Additional Commentary. So that's it. The guide's done. Done-ish. I'm not sure we can publish a word without verifying what all them traders told us. Call me crazy, but I don't think Trashcan Carla is the most reliable source. She's gonna have to be. No more traveling for you. Doc's orders. Mary Jane, will you make me a promise? Anything, Lil. Promise me that someday you'll finish the guide, for real this time? I promise. Now let's go home. And then Kay, a merchant here in Bunker Hill, interrupts their conversation and says, where is home, if you don't mind me asking? Quincy, says Lily. You sure you want to head down there, says Kay. I hear it's swarming with gunners. It'll be all right. I got my gal with me. Ain't been a gunner in the wasteland that's bested her yet. So Mary Jane and Lily came from Quincy. Arriving at Quincy, we can read the next travel guide entry. You've made it to Quincy, where Mary Jane and I live. There's a lot to see and do. I honestly don't know where to start. Tell me about the people who live here, we can say. Well, she says, there's Mayor Jackson, he runs the place. Sloan, Irma, and especially Sturges are handy with the ranch. The Long family run one of the stores in the neighborhood. And of course, I can't forget about Mama Murphy, who's a bona fide fortune teller. Where do you live, we can ask? Well, she says, we used to have a place near Fenton's Foodstuffs, but it's being rented out now that we're going on this adventure. We did talk about eventually fixing up a home a little further south, near the Peabodys, somewhere with a little less hustle and bustle. If you're reading this now, I bet you'll find us there. How did you two meet, we can ask? I was coming out of Fenton's carrying a crate of potatoes, she says. She was heading out of the gun store with enough firepower to mow down a 10-story deathclaw. We ended up bumping into each other and dropping everything all over the floor. It was love at first collision. Well, that's all the questions I have, we can say. And she says, great. And now that you're here, don't forget to stop by and say hi. I'd love to hear all about you and your adventures. Maybe I can even show you around. After all, I promised to be your guide, and I aim to honor that commitment in more ways than one. See you soon. So before the Quincy massacre, Mary Jane and Lily left to go on their adventure. And they were thinking of settling in a small house by the Peabodys. Maybe we can find them there. Heading south from downtown Quincy towards the Peabodys, we see a light off to the west. It's a freshly dug grave. There's a cross as a headstone, flowers and vases, a Minuteman hat, and a still-lit candle. This is Lily's grave. Here she succumbed to her cancer and died. To complete Mary Jane's final wish, we can leave her wedding ring here on Lily's grave. With that, we complete the quest way back home. We see both of their rings in a small bowl by the candle. Accessing the travel guide, we can read the couple's final additional commentary. We're finally home. You think the gunners will let us in? By the looks of those laser pistols, probably not. On the flip side, They'd probably help us with the cremation. Maybe I should ask them for help. No way. If those bastards touched a hair on your head. MJ, I'm dying anyway. Can you just set me down right here? Look, I know I haven't been the best partner. Stop. You've been my everything. I love you. I love you too. I bet it really does have hills, you know? Sanctuary? I wish I could have seen it for myself. Don't worry. We will. And so after burying Lily, Mary Jane left to fulfill Lily's dying wish to complete the travel guide with first-hand experience. Little did Lily know that sending Mary Jane on this mission would be sending her to her death. That's it for the quest. But there are still well over a dozen travel guide entries yet to read. Next, we can head to Abernathy Farm. Examining the guide in our inventory, we see that the additional commentary entries are now gone. Now that the quest is complete, from here on out, all we find are the guide entries. My sources tell me Abernathy Farm is run by the Abernathys. You might think I could have figured that out myself, but I'm the kind of person who likes to double check. But yeah, the Abernathys grow melons and potatoes, and even have a Brahmin named Clara. They're also real nice people from what I hear, a rare thing these days. Some folks around here are so stuck up, they'd drown in a rainstorm, but farmers like the Abernathys are good people. Farmers are the backbone of society, we can say. That's right, she says. Without food, you can't do much of anything. Believe me, I've tried. Well, it wasn't so much trying as it was just not having anything to eat. It was bad. Or we can say, you can't assume that just because they farm. And she says, well, maybe not. I'm sure there's a bad egg in the bunch somewhere, but for the most part, when you work with your hands, it has a way of humbling you. It's only when things come easy that you start to get full of yourself. Or we can say they are good people, which is why I hate them. Hey now, she says, I get that everyone's got a little devil in them, but I like to think I'm gonna find a way to turn you. At the very least, you're willing to talk, which is more than I can say for most folks, so maybe you'll have an open mind about farmers too. Or we can say they must be tough too, to survive up north. Yeah, definitely, she says. It's probably from eating all those potatoes. I knew a guy who ate nothing but eggs and potatoes as a kid, and now he looks like a damn super mutant, only less green. He's a farmer too. Good guy. I guess what I'm saying is, it wouldn't surprise me if the Abernathys were nice folks. They can also probably put you to work, if you want to make a cap or two. We can say, hopefully they'll pay more than 2 caps. And she says, oh, I'm sure their prices are fair as a friar on Sunday. And if not, let me know so I can update the guide. Or we can say, I abhor hard labor. And she says, now I ain't gonna hear none of that. You gotta get your palms dirty if you want to make it out here. And the last thing I need is this guide on the body of a dead person. That's not good advertising. Or we can say, I plan on doing just that. Thanks. Good for you, she says. A lot of people want to be heroes and save the Commonwealth, but there's no shame in doing a little manual labor. Or we can say, it'll be good exercise. Right, she says. If you look at it that way, it ain't even work. It's just a way to stay healthy. See, I knew you'd have the right attitude about this. But yeah, that's all the thoughts I have about Abernathy Farm. Let me know when you find somewhere new. Next, we can head to the Red Rocket truck stop. Red Rocket, drive in, fly out. At least, that's what the ads say. It'd probably help if the cars really did fly, seeing as the road is more pothole than gravel. According to the traders we talked to, this place is infested with all kinds of vermin, so be careful. Define vermin, we can say. Well, mole rats would be vermin, she says. Regular rats too. Pretty much anything with the word rat in it would qualify. Or we can say, the only real vermin are the people. Oh, that's deep, she says. And dark. Deep and dark. Granted, a rat's never overcharged me for water, which is more than I can say for some. Or we can say, animals are kind if you're kind to them. Are they though, she says. A lot of them tend to treat you like food. Although, I guess we do the same. Or we can say, I'll be sure to kill anything that moves. That's what Mary Jane says, she says. Shoot first and ask questions later. Problem is, it's hard to ask questions when the guy you shot is dead. But if someone were to clean this place out, it'd probably make for a good settlement. It's got a roof, an office, and cheap coolant. The coolant is useless without a car, we can say. She says true, but you know what they say, one step at a time. It just so happens the second step is more like a triple jump. Or we can say the soil might be toxic. And she says, oh, maybe, but I read somewhere that the Red Rocket won some kind of award for being a trash buster, whatever that is. So maybe it's safe? Or we can say, I've always wanted my own office. And she says, I know, right? It puts you in the mood for work. You just need some employees to yell at, and you'll be feeling like the mayor. Or we can say, it'd make a good trading post. Yeah, she says, Sanctuary's pretty close, isn't it? Must have been convenient for the people to get their coolant. Noisy with all the cars zooming by, but convenient. Well, it was fun chatting about Red Rocket with you. On to the next stop. Next, we can go to Cambridge. Cambridge, home of the world-famous Commonwealth Institute of Technology. Of course, of those three words, only one of them keeps people up at night. Guess which one? Commonwealth, we can say. True, she says. The Commonwealth is pretty scary overall. I guess it's different for folks who live here, though. We may be neck-deep in mirelurks and radroaches, but it's still home. In terms of what's scary, I was actually thinking of the Institute. Or we can say Institute. And she says, ding ding! That's correct! Mary Jane, tell our contestant what they've won. Okay, she's not playing along, but the point is, you're right. The Institute's got people wound tighter than a 30-hour clock. Or we can say technology. And she says, I'd say technology is scary to some folks, but it's usually old-timers who don't want to learn new things. I was thinking more along the lines of the Institute. They got everyone spooked, from the old men in their rocking chairs to the babies in the crib. Or we can say, none of them really. They're just words. I don't know, she says. I'd say words are pretty powerful things, especially when it comes to the Institute. They've got people so paranoid they won't sleep unless someone's watching them. But I'm interested in what you think. What are your thoughts on the whole Institute story? Are they real? I don't have any thoughts, we can say. Not one, she says? Not even a passing one? Well, that's actually kind of refreshing. Some people will hunt you down for weeks just to tell you what they think of the weather. Nice to see some folks don't need to have an opinion on everything. Or we can say, the Institute doesn't exist. It's all an elaborate hoax. You could be right, she says. Some people get so paranoid they start seeing mirelurks in their soup. Hard to know what to believe. Still, it's one hell of a hoax if they got the whole Commonwealth singing the same tune. Or we can say, the Institute is real. That's how most folks feel, she says. The problem is, they aren't exactly knocking on doors and being friendly neighbors. So it's easy to think they don't have the best intentions. But I don't know. The truth tends to get muddier than a raider's boot when people are scared. Hard to know what to believe. Or we can say, I'm from the Institute. Wow, she says. Didn't expect you to say that. I heard the Institute was a lot more secretive. But maybe I got it all wrong. And seeing as you're ready to share, I'd suggest heading down to Diamond City and having a chat with Piper. She'll get your story out there. And more importantly, get it right. Either way, I don't see any Institute employees walking around CIT these days. So even if they do exist, they sure as hell don't exist here. But maybe we'll see somebody at the next location. Only way to know is to go. Next, we can go to the Starlight Drive-In. The Starlight Drive-In sounds romantic. This is one place I really wish I got to see. But from what the traders tell me, it's not exactly the kind of place you bring a date, at least not anymore. But still, I would have liked to see it. Just me and Mary Jane taking a stroll under the stars. The stars were on the screen, not the sky, we can say. Can it be both, she says? Unless it's cloudy there every day. That would sure be a downer for whoever came up with the name. False advertising and all that. Or we can say, the only stars you'll see are from the concussions. Oh, is it dangerous, she says? I guess that's a rhetorical question. It's probably easier to list the places that aren't dangerous. You can count those on one hand, using only your thumbs. Or we can say, it does sound romantic. Doesn't it, she says? Mary Jane keeps reminding me that it doesn't actually look the way it does in my head, but I can't help myself. Still, we want the guide to be accurate, so she wins that battle more often than not. Or we can say, it's not really my thing. Yeah, she says, some people just aren't a fan of nature. Me, I like to take in the splendor of it all. Seeing those stars way up high, it almost feels like someone's watching over us. By the way, speaking of romance, do you have anyone in your life? Someone you'd like to take to dinner in a pre-war movie? I do, we can say. That's great, she says. If we ever meet, you've got to tell me all about it. How you met, what you do for fun, and how you make love stay. And of course, I'm inviting myself to the wedding if and when that happens. Or we can say, not yet. I'm still looking. Well, she says, don't give up just yet. I'm sure that special someone is just around the corner. Or the next one. I mean, it can't always be a feral. One of these days, it might be your future spouse. Or we can say, I'm not interested in that sort of thing. Yet, she says, love has a way of knocking on your door in the middle of the night when you're just trying to get some shut-eye. You tell it to get out, but it's got 50 lockpicks for the door and the combination to your heart. Before you realize, it damn near owns the place. And the rents do. Or we can say, I was thinking of taking you, actually. Ha, she says, Mary Jane would probably object, but we can go on a double date. I just need to find you the right partner. All right, so Lily writes an interactive guide here wherein some wastelander she doesn't know asks her out, when this wastelander supposedly already knows that she's married? All right then. Anyways, I've pried enough into your personal life. Let's talk again at the next location. Next, we can travel to Covenant. Mary Jane here. So Lily just made me take something called a safe test. Supposedly, Covenant uses it to keep certain people out. Not sure who. Point is, the test is obnoxiously stupid, and I feel dumber for taking it. What kind of questions are on the test, we can ask? There was something about a quantum harmonica or some crap. I don't know. I just told them to bugger off. Or we can say, I don't think you can get any dumber. Hey, asshole, if we ever meet, tell me to my face so I can punch the crap out of yours. Hey, she wrote it. What the heck? Or we can say, it's important to have security measures. Sure, she says. The turrets I get, that makes sense. The rest of it is stupendously pointless. Or we can say, I wonder what they're so paranoid about. Who knows, she says. I can't imagine anyone would want to live in their crappy neighborhood anyway. They shouldn't be so picky about who gets in. Anyway, the safe test doesn't pass the bullcrap one. And if you think about it, that's really the only test you need. Is the bullcrap test multiple choice, we can ask? And she says, no, it's true or false. Either you're crapping me or you're not. Or we can say, it doesn't hurt to be extra careful. And she says, yeah, I agree to an extent, but you have to be smart about it too. The safe test is like putting a bayonet on a rocket launcher. The whole thing's a waste of time. Or we can say, do you think there's an ulterior motive? If there is, I don't know what, she says. Maybe they put you on a list, try and kidnap you at night, like a bunch of brain-dead mutants. But makes no difference to me. I sleep with one eye open regardless. Or we can say, you're being paranoid. I'm sure Covenant is a nice place. It's too nice, too clean. Last time I came across a place that nice, that clean, it was full of cannibals. Wait a minute, she's been to Andale? How did she survive and not get eaten? Was she in the capital wasteland 10 years ago? Well, maybe there's another pristine pre-war town filled with cannibals. Uh-oh. Maybe the safe test is about finding out how stinking tasty you'd be on a spit roast. You never know. So yeah, don't take the stupid test. Just move on. Next, we can visit the Dugout Inn of Diamond City. Batter up! The world-famous Dugout Inn is a great place to stop and have a drink. It's owned by the Bobrov brothers. Vadim serves the drinks, and Yefim does everything else. Be sure to ask Vadim about the time he came face-to-face with a Mirelurk. He loves that story. How do I tell the brothers apart, we can ask? Well, she says, Vadim has a bald head, a big nose, and so does Yefim. I guess the easy way is ask them about the Mirelurks. Or we can say, Mirelurks are pretty low on the danger scale. Hatchlings maybe, she says, but the kings and queens are pretty fierce. But I'm not exactly a wasteland warrior like Mary Jane. Or we can say, I bet he made that story up. And she says, he wouldn't do that, would he? Just lie to a complete stranger? Oh, now I'm getting suspicious. Or we can say, so the Dugout Inn is a family business. And she says, that it is. Well, just 2 family members, although I guess that's the bare minimum number of people you need to make a family. If you're just one person, you're not a family, you're just you. But yeah, the Bobrovs don't just sell beds and comfort, they also sell the family moonshine. Are you sure it's safe to drink, we can ask? I ain't sure of anything, she says, but it can't be any worse than some 200-year-old bottle of vodka that's been sitting in the sun all day. Or we can say, I'm always up for a drink. Yeah, me too, she says. Ain't nothing wrong with a little hooch to take the edge off. Or we can say, I don't drink alcohol. Well, she says, there's nothing wrong with that. The brothers sell all kinds of drinks, even non-alcoholic ones. Although, if you ask me, Nuka-Cola's just as bad a chem as any other. Or we can say, I'm trying to stay sober. Lay off the booze talk, please. And she says, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. This is supposed to be a guide for everybody, sober folks included. Anyways, I hope you enjoy your stay at the Dugout Inn. Sleep tight and don't let the Mirelurks bite. Next, we can go to the Boston Library. Mary Jane here. You probably figured the last place you'd hear from me is a library, but I'm not here to read some crusty old bullcrap about wizards and pirates. There's a lot of useful information in this place. Stuff that can help with the gun. That goes for both modding and maintaining it. No point reinventing the wheel. What sort of books are helpful, we can ask? Well, the first thing I'd check out is a book on gun care. Your hands are covered in gunk. Dirt, oil, all kinds of crap that can corrode the metal on your rifle. Knowing how to clean a gun is as important as knowing how to use it. Is there a book that'll help modding the CR-74L, we can ask? And she says, if there is, I've probably already read it. I actually got the idea for the drum magazine from a history book about mobsters. You're welcome to look, but I'd stick to the places I listed on the guide. Well, anything besides gun books I should look for, we can ask? Normally I'd say the survival crap, but all of it was written pre-war, so it's not as useful as you'd think. You read a book about lassoing a bull and the first question you ask is, which head? Well, back then, they only had one. Ever read any stories for fun, we can ask? No. Well, that's all the questions I have. Alright, well, don't forget to put the books back when you're done with them. It's still a library. Now I have to go and drag Lily out of whatever imaginary world she's got herself trapped in. Mutants don't wait for you to finish your book. See ya. Next, we can head to the combat zone. Mary Jane here. Lily figured I'd be a better guide for this place. Figures I might have some tips or advice on how to survive. Well, the best advice I can give you is to turn the crap around. The combat zone is just another lawless dunghole full of junkies and raider trash. Sounds like my kind of place, we can say. In my experience, people who talk tough eat lead. Or we can say, are you suggesting I run? Yeah, why the hell not? Running doesn't make you a coward, it makes you a survivor. Or we can say, might be worth clearing out then. If you can do it, be my guest. You'd put Tommy out of a job, but don't feel sorry for that lowlife. He's been profiting off this crap show long enough. Or we can say, that's a little harsh, don't you think? Harsh? Considering the crap they've done, calling raiders trash is pretty damn kind if you ask me. If anything, I should apologize to the stinkin' trash. In any case, not much has changed around here in the past 200 years. Lily says in the old world the combat zone was a hub for adult entertainment. No idea what that means, but beating people to death seems adult enough. We can say, combat zone is a euphemism for the sex industry. That's what Lily says, but I don't believe it. Why the hell would they call it the combat zone then? Or we can say, children can beat people to death too. Yeah, that's true. Children are nasty little craps. Might as well give them a front row seat. Still, can't imagine they were as bad in the old world. Or we can say, proper adults don't engage in violence. Wow, must be real nice living in a fantasy land. I mean, if that's what people believed back in the day, it's no wonder they're all dead. Or we can say, beating people to death is my favorite pastime. Yeah, it's as American as apple pie and baseball. Still, can't imagine the people in those billboards doing it. They all look so doggone clean it makes me sick. It doesn't matter. Whatever it was, it's a crap hole now. I'd say bye, but I'm probably talking to a dead person anyway. Next, we can go to Hubris Comics. If you're a fan of comics, this is the place for you. A lot of your favorites were made here. I'm talking Grognak the Barbarian, The Unstoppables, even the Silver Shroud radio program. As a kid, I used to read them at the breakfast table, and I still do, only now I've traded the milk and cookies for steak and cerveza. Anyways, since you're here, I gotta ask, are you a fan of comics? Comic books rot your brain, we can say. Is that a fact, she says. I guess that explains where all the Ferals came from. It wasn't the nukes that made them, it was just a bunch of teenagers who didn't listen to their mothers. Or we can say, I enjoy a good comic every now and then. Yeah, comics aren't for everybody, she says, but they're definitely for you and me. I just like being able to escape every once in a while to a place where the good guys actually win. Or we can say, I like comics, but I'm not a fan of hubris comics. They are a little over the top, she says, but I like that. I get enough realism just living. Or we can say, I'm a collector. Fan doesn't do me justice. Oh wow, she says, then you're gonna love this place. It's got all sorts of memorabilia just lying around. Hell, even the ashtrays are a collector's item if you think about it. Like the place where the Silver Shroud put out his cigarette butts. Gotta be worth something to somebody, right? But yeah, this building is where all the soup got made. I hear on the top floor they even got a TV studio. Now if we could get something like that working, it would change the Commonwealth. I'm all for it, we can say. Great, she says. Now we just need to hire like 1 billion scientists to get on it, and bodyguards to protect them. Once we get all that sorted out, it's time for the artists to get to work. Or we can say, what sort of shows would we broadcast? And she says, I don't know. At first I was thinking we'd get Piper to broadcast the news, but she could use the radio for that. Although, speaking of which, if we did get the TVs working, Mary Jane says Travis would lose his job. She says he's got a face made for radio. I don't know what that means, seeing as no one can see it. Oh, I just got it. Yeah, that's not very nice. Or we can say, bringing back TV is a pipe dream. And she says, you just need a little more pep in your step, or some mentats in your... What rhymes with mentats? You get the idea. Although I'm a little wary of this stuff, to be honest. It looks like a vitamin, but it feels more like a chem. And if Old World Blues is to be believed, it has a chalky texture. Or we can say, the only thing worse than comics is TV. And she says, I think there's a word for people this grumpy, but I'm sure you've got nothing to worry about, at least in terms of TV coming back to the Commonwealth. The grumpiness is another thing entirely. Oh well, for now we'll just have to be happy with what we've got. Enjoy Hubris Comics and bring me back a souvenir. Next, we can travel to the Memory Den in Good Neighbor. Anytime you're in Good Neighbor, you'll want to pay a visit to the mysterious Memory Den. Run by a sultry hostess by the name of Irma, this literal trip down memory lane is a delight for any traveler, provided you've cleaned out your closet of any skeletons. We can say, my closet is nothing but skeletons. What do I do? In that case, she says, I turn around and head straight to the third rail. To be honest, I ain't much for looking back anyway. You can't live in the past, and you can't run away from it either. Or we can say, I'm not scared of my past. Well, she says, then there's the other danger, living in it. I hear some folks get hooked on old memories, like a chem. Or we can say, everyone has a few skeletons, it's no big deal. Sure, nobody's perfect, she says, especially if you want to survive. Mary Jane likes to say the only perfect people in the Commonwealth are dead or delusional. Or we can say, I don't like to obsess over the past. Yeah, I try not to either, she says. We can't flush out the bad memories. All we can do is make new ones. But I don't mean to scare you. I'm sure most memories are pretty harmless. Some are even good. When I hopped in, I saw the day I met Mary Jane. As long as you accentuate the positive, you should be fine. There's a song about that, if you haven't heard. I hate that song, we can say, with a passion. But it's so catchy, she says. Ah, well, Mary Jane hates it too. She says it makes her teeth rot. So for her sake, I only play it like 6 times a day instead of 12. Or we can say, I'm the type to accentuate the negative. Well, she says, that just means you need someone in your life to balance that out. Hopefully you've already found that person like I have. And no, pets don't count. Or we can say, in general, I'm a positive person. So am I, she says. I like to think if we ever met in person, we'd get along great. Or we can say, just don't mess with Mr. In-Between. That's actually strange advice, she says, if you think about it. Having balance is typically a good thing, but we shouldn't waste too much time thinking about it. It's probably not that deep. Well, I hope your next trip down memory lane is a good one. See you back in the present. Next, we can travel to Boston Common. The Boston Common. There's so much history here. There's the Massachusetts State House, the old Granary burying ground, and the iconic Freedom Trail. If you follow the red brick road, you'll pass by a few more landmarks, even the house of the great Paul Revere. But rumor has it, it's also the path that modern-day refugees take when seeking their own freedom. Refugees, we can ask? Do you mean synths? Well, she says, people around here don't like that term. It has a stigma, so I like to call them refugees. It makes them sound more sympathetic. Or we can say, history often repeats itself. It does, sadly, she says. That's why we have to teach it, so people don't forget. This isn't the first time refugees have been unfairly persecuted. Or we can say, that'd seem like an easy trail to follow. It would, she says, if you knew to look for it. Sometimes the best place to hide something is in plain sight. Most people wouldn't think the refugees are using something so obvious. Or that they'd use a password like railroad for the headquarters for the railroad. Or we can say, I'm not interested in a history lesson. Yeah, she says, it's not for everybody. Mary Jane seems more interested in the Giant of Swan's Pond than a bunch of historical sites. Of course, it's not just about the history, it's about what's happening here in the present. But yeah, I'm technically talking about synths. Anyway, what's your take on the whole issue? We can say, synths are Institute spies. That's the prevailing wisdom, she says. Although I wouldn't call it wisdom so much as paranoia. Not saying there aren't spies, just that you can't judge an orchard based on a few bad apples. Or we can say, synths murder and replace people. And she says, if they do, that's scary. I wouldn't know what to do if I found my Mary Jane wasn't the woman I married. That's the one thing that makes me take pause. I want to support the refugees, but I get why people are scared. Or we can say, synths are people, like you and me. That's pretty much how I feel, she says. I don't know if we're in the right, you just gotta trust your gut sometimes. Or we can say, I don't really have an opinion either way. And she says, sometimes that's the best way to go about it when it's hard to take sides. But Mary Jane says doing nothing is even worse. But either way, it's a complicated issue, and I'm glad we had this talk. Let's chat again sometime. Next, we can travel to Jamaica Plain. You've seen the posters and the billboards all over the Commonwealth. They tell the story of a priceless treasure on display for 1 week only, the very week the world ended. 200 years later, the secrets of Jamaica Plain remain a mystery. Many a scaver has sought its legendary treasure, never to return. We can say, I'm sure plenty of them have returned. And she says, okay, maybe you're right. But they return empty-handed, which means it's still out there, waiting to be claimed. Or we can say, I'm not some ordinary scaver, though. That's true, she says. You have a handy guide like me to show you the way. Although, I didn't find the treasure. But hey, at the very least, I can tell you all the things not to do. Or we can say, whatever it was, it's worthless now. You've got a point, she says. Being priceless by old world standards doesn't mean a hill of beans now. Plus, it might not be in the same condition it was then. I found a painting once that must have been real expensive before it was chewed up and spit out by a mole rat. Although, who knows? Maybe that made it worth more. Or we can say, it's definitely something to think about. Yeah, she says, you can never be too careful. On top of all the usual dangers, there's gonna be a lot of folks gunning for that treasure. Literally. Anyways, say you found the treasure and it was worth millions of caps. What would you do with it? We can say, I'd sell it to the highest bidder. Yeah, she says, fortune and glory is pretty much the default answer. But it's not like the other options can compete. Say what you will about being greedy, but a sack full of caps sure beats starving to death. Or we can say, I'd donate it to the poor. Well, she says, that makes me happy it was you who picked up this guide. I bet you're choosing all the good answers and none of the lippy ones. But even if you did, I forgive you, seeing as you're working to make the Commonwealth a better place. Or we can say, I'd keep it on display with the rest of my trophies. And she says, so you got more than just one? Well, doesn't surprise me, given you're all the way out here diving in the deep waters without a life vest. Of course, I consider this guide a bit of a life vest, so at least you have that. Or we can say, I'd toss it in the garbage. Wow, she says, you're an interesting one, I'll give you that. I mean, I get that it's the journey and not the destination that matters, but that's taking it to another level. Well, hope you enjoyed Jamaica Plain, and remember, the real treasure comes with the exploration. Next, we can travel to Vault 81. So, we're outside Vault 81, and well, they're not letting us in. Also, Mary Jane's giving me the I told you so face. Security wants to know who we are, so... Tell them you're traitors, we can say. Good idea, she says. Problem is, it didn't work. Or we can say you got lost. Yeah, then they'd probably just give us directions to Diamond City. Or we can say, try threatening them. And she says, Mary Jane might like that answer. I'd rather not make a bad first impression. Or we can say, run! Oh, she says, do you think they're gonna shoot us? But they'd have to open the door to do that. We could mention the guide, but do you think they'd be open to sharing their story with the world? No, we can say, it'd be a security risk for them. I guess, she says, but you'd think that big steel door would be enough security for anyone. Or we can say, some might, others not. Yeah, she says, getting a group of people to agree on anything is like getting a cat to be a dog. Or we can say, maybe, if you paid them. True, she says, caps have a way of making even dead men whistle Dixie. Or we can say, it'd probably be a boring story anyway. I don't know, she says. Living underground in a vault for generations, things could really go one way or the other. Crazy quiet, or quietly crazy. Oh well, some things are best left as mysteries, like whatever it is we had for lunch. On to the next stop. Next, we can travel to the Boston Airport. The Boston Airport. Back in the old world, they say people used to fly out of here in big metal birds. Now that sounds crazier than a bloatfly in an outhouse. But hey, I've seen enough to where I don't doubt it. Of course they did, we can say. I've seen it. Well, she says, seeing as the last plane flew over 200 years ago, you, my friend, are either a ghoul or very good at bending the truth. Or we can say, they walked, they ran, sometimes they jumped, but fly? Never. Now you're just pulling my chain, she says. Otherwise, why build the airport? Kinda putting the cart before the horse, if you know what I mean. Or we can say, flying is easy, landing is hard. Or, she says, if you want to be exact, landing and surviving. Landing and dying? Anyone can do that. Or we can say, people still fly today. Really, she says? I need to look up more. I always thought those were clouds. Still, whether people flew or not, the idea of it seems romantic. You ever think of flying off to a faraway land with the one you love? I only love myself, we can say, so it'd be a solo trip. Well, she says, we can't have that. I'm gonna have to throw in some romance tips in the next guide. We can even go on a double date, if Mary Jane behaves. Or we can say, it sounds fun, but I have a lot of work to do here. And she says, you're gonna work yourself into an early grave if you go on like that. Everyone needs a break, even someone as important as yourself. Or we can say, I'm more of a homebody. And she says, yet here you are, traveling the wide, wide world. We'll make an explorer out of you yet. Or we can say, it's good to daydream every now and then. And she says, I completely agree. Everyone's got to have dreams. Daydreams, night dreams, big dreams, and little dreams. Dealer's choice. Well, that's all from the Boston Airport. Fly safe. Next, we go to the castle. The castle, she says, formerly the base of the Minutemen, until Mirelurks took over about 50 years ago. The Lurks don't really like freedom. They have a monarchy with a queen and everything. Maybe that's why they wanted a castle. It's more of a dictatorship, we can say. Can't say I disagree, she says, but that's why the Minutemen exist, to stop dictators and bring freedom to the Commonwealth. Or we can say, I too bend the knee to the Mirelurk Queen. And she says, oh, well, I think it's best you defect, because if they haven't already, the Minutemen are going to reclaim the castle and the Commonwealth. Or we can say, the castle belongs to the Minutemen. And she says, you're preaching to the choir. Or do you mean they've already taken it back? That'd be amazing if true. Or we can say, can't have a queen without a castle. And she says, I know, right? The two go together like biscuits and gravy, potatoes and corn, freedom and the Minutemen. Oh, and if you can't tell, I'm a bit of a fan. I even have the hat. Yeah, that's the hat we found on her grave. Mary Jane says she don't like it much, but I think she's just jealous she doesn't have one. We can say, why? Are you gonna leave her for the hat? And she says, ha, I just might if she doesn't turn that frown upside down more often, but I think she's safe for now. Or we can say, hats are a vital protection against sunburn. And she says, that's a good tip. I should really make that part of my guide. Sometimes it ain't the gunners or the lurks that you gotta worry about, it's the rads and the sunburn. Or we can say, a hat won't stop a bullet. Maybe not, she says, but not much will these days. I mean, you should take a gander at my wife's gun. I feel like if you shot the ground, the bullet would go clean through, all the way to space. Or we can say, I like to let my head breathe a bit. And she says it does get sweaty in there sometimes. Mary Jane suggested I punch some holes in it, same as a gun barrel. I love the woman, but she doesn't know a thing about style. I don't mind being as sweaty as a dog in the desert if it means I'm looking my best. Oh, God. Well, that's all I got to say about the castle. Let's talk again sometime. Next, we can travel to Easy City Downs. Oddly enough, the entry in the Commonwealth Travel Guide says East City Downs. The funny thing about this is before I did my lore video on Easy City Downs, which you can watch here, I too, for the longest time, thought it was East City Downs. And many of the viewers left comments on that lore video that they too thought it was East City Downs. But no, in the game it's called Easy City Downs. It's like the whole Berenstein Bear thing all over again. Anyway, Mary Jane here thought it was East City Downs and listed it as such in the guide. Mary Jane here. Lily figured this part of the guide was more my speed, seeing as I like to gamble. I know, I don't seem like the type. I usually pass on the dumb stuff. Gambling? Might as well toss my caps in the ocean. But I don't know, I like it. Still, my rule is you're allowed 2 vices. Anything more and you might as well kill yourself. Well, we can say, I guess I'm doomed then. Yeah, well, on the bright side, the Commonwealth will probably kill you first. Or we can say, I don't have many vices to be honest. Good. Even the seemingly harmless crap, booze, smokes, will rip up your insides like rusty shrapnel. Or we can say, what's your other vice? I don't have one, at least not yet. Still sorting that part out. Or we can say, what are Lily's vices? Too many to stinkin' count. She doesn't take well to rules. That's why I'm always saving her neck. Anyways, I should mention this place doesn't look like they're taking any bets. At least, not from a stranger. Whole place is a joke. Seems like that would be bad for business, we can say. Yeah, never to attract to turn away paying customers. Or we can say, maybe they're just renovating. What exactly? It's just a bunch of dirt and robots running in a circle. I don't get it. Although, maybe it's just to lure people in. We tried to get close and they started shooting at us. Or we can say, the only real joke is my life. Seems like the guys running the track agree, seeing as they want to end it. Or we can say, what kind of races are there to bet on? From the looks of it, it's just a bunch of bots turning left, but I can't be sure. We tried to get close and they started shooting at us. I guess they figure they can make more caps robbing people the old-fashioned way. Well, if you're planning on going inside, my suggestion is to keep your eyes up and the safety off. Next, we can travel to Lake Cochituate. You've arrived at Lake Cochituate. This used to be the water supply for all of the Commonwealth, at least until somebody tried to drink it and realized how bad it tastes. Blah! I still find the water refreshing, we can say. Well, she says, you're what we call a lead belly. Personally, I like to think I can stomach a lot. What I can't abide is the smell. That's what triggers the not-so-fun times. Nice reference to the lead belly perk there. Or we can say, you can still swim in the lake. Oh, she says, that's probably even worse. You need to drink water to live, and sometimes that calls for some tough decisions. But swimming? I think I'll just take the long way around, thank you very much. Or we can say, they should rename it to Lake Toxic Bile. And she says, it was either that or Lake Vomit. Although, I guess vomiting is what you do after you drink it. Or we can say, I only drink treated, purified water. Ha, she says, don't tell that to Mary Jane. She'd call you an elitist. Or at least the swear word version of that. Although, to be fair, it's not the lake's fault it tastes so bad. That's what nuclear war and 200 years of neglect can do to you. One day we can say it'll be crystal clear again. Now that's what I like to hear, she says. Some positivity. In fact, we'll fix up the Commonwealth one toxic acre at a time. It's just gonna take a little science, a little elbow grease, and a whole bunch of raiders finding Jesus. Or we can say, I'd say overfishing is a bigger issue. Bigger than nuclear war, she says? Still, now that you mention it, I didn't see a whole lot of fish in the lake, but it might be better that way. Better we eat them before they mutate into something worse. I think I grew a third eye just looking at it. It'll be a while before it's safe to drink. Or we can say, neglect is fine. It's when we meddle that things go wrong. And she says, you might be right about that. I tried to get two friends on a blind date once, and they just wouldn't do it. Fast forward 2 years, and I found out they got married on their own. Sometimes you just gotta let fate take the wheel. Maybe the same is true for this lake. Or we can say, we'll just have to spend the next 2 centuries restoring it. Yeah, she says, although most of us will be gone by then, I guess we just gotta teach the next generation to carry on the fight. Or better yet, carry on the peace. Fighting is what got us in this mess in the first place. But for now, we'll just have to enjoy it for what it is. Talk to you soon. And with that, we've visited every single location on Lily and Mary Jane's Commonwealth Travel Guide. And we don't really get anything for it. I mean, we got the gun and we got the experience from completing the quest, but visiting all the locations on the guide is outside the quest, and yet we don't unlock an end-of-dungeon steamer trunk or anything. Oh well, I guess it's as Lily said in her entry on Jamaica Plain, the real treasure was the experience. So that is the CR-74L combat rifle creation for the Creation Club. So there are 2 big pieces to this creation. The weapon and this huge amount of side content, this travel guide. Combined, clearly they put in an enormous amount of work to create this creation. The quality of the gun is great. I love the way the combat rifle looks, and they addressed many of the glaring issues that bothered so many players with some of the other creations. The reflex sights line up, the hand on the sole survivor actually meets the weapon. There are so many different modifications we can make to it. Many of them have completely unique meshes and textures, and I really enjoyed the fact that we had to go through a separate quest to get each piece. There were a couple of things that were weird. I don't understand how car coolant schematics can help you make a silencer. In general, Mary Jane just got a lot wrong when talking about the gun. Fluted barrels, for example, don't work in any way the way she described them. It just would have been better had she not tried to get technical about the weapon. I mean, I realize it's a fantasy weapon. You can make up anything you want about an energy weapon like a plasma rifle. You could say that the plasma injector works by coagulating the flatulence inhibitor before subsuming the mastication of the particle emitter or something. But when talking about a weapon based in reality, based on known physics, you kinda gotta get those details right. And they really didn't. And I'm not sure why they kept referring to the reflex sights as reflex scopes. I mean, I'm happy to admit that I'm not a big gun guy. There's a lot about guns that I just don't know, but I always thought these were called reflex sights. Anyway, I'm being really picky. Let's move on to the travel guide. I have conflicting emotions about this travel guide. On one hand, I'm blown away. I'm super impressed. They put an enormous amount of work into this. They not only made another side quest with 2 new characters who had distinct personalities, but they created a travel guide that can give a player an entire gameplay's worth of content. That said, going through each of these entries felt really tedious. But upon reflection, I think the reason for that is the way I chose to consume that content. I chose to go through it all at once, and I don't think that's the way this travel guide was designed to be enjoyed. For me as a player with a character over level 100 who has visited every location and done everything in the game, I spent over 4 hours recording each and every one of these locations, and most of that time was spent looking at loading screens. Fast traveling to a new location, sometimes zoning in to an interior cell. By the time I was done, I was exhausted. And it was frankly hard for me to focus on the story and enjoy it while suffering through all of these really long loading screens. However, I believe this guide was designed to be enjoyed by a new character. A new character who picks up the gun and picks up the guide early on in his or her gameplay. And then, as we naturally go through the world and explore new locations, we would have this travel guide with us that we could then pop open to read a short little snippet while enjoying the rest of the content that we find at that location. If we enjoy it in that way, it's much less tedious, and it kind of feels like we've got another companion traveling with us. While I did walk away from this creation exhausted and ready for it to be done, this is still the kind of content I want to see more of from the Creation Club. Content that gives the player many different choices, many different ways to respond. Content that a new character can enjoy at a very early stage in the game and later on in the game. Content with characters that have personalities and that are interesting. To sum up, the lore in this creation is probably not something that's suitable for an existing character. But the story in this creation is great for a brand new character and a brand new playthrough. But those are just my thoughts. If you managed to get through this thing all the way to the end, I would love to hear what you've got to say. Let me know in the comments section below. I publish many videos each and every week on my channel, so if you don't want to miss my next episode, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. If you have and you feel like you're still missing out on YouTube notifications, consider following me on Twitter at Oxhorn. I update Twitter manually with every new piece of content that I publish. I've got a brand new shirt in the shop, Enclave. Boast your support for the Enclave and everything they stand for with this brand new design that comes on shirts in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes and in a wide array of colors. You can also find it on other products as well, like smartphone cases, pillows, posters, mugs, stickers, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming a patron on Patreon or a member here on YouTube. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon with more brand new videos.